Don't often see that from the African American community. We have a lot of disparate groups out there who say they speak for Black America, but no real political sway per se.
We have a lot of people within the African American community who have appointed themselves as the leaders of Black America. We do have some lobbying groups, but the thing is, I think that we are seeing an enormous generational divide within the Black civil rights movement. We have new Black leadership. If you look at President Obama and how he ran his campaign, if you look at mayors around the country like Cory Booker or Adrian Fenty here in Washington, D.C., it is a non-traditional civil rights leadership that we're looking at. And I think the rules have to be completely rewritten, and Black America needs to realize that we have a different agenda.
Joe, what's your thought on that? I mean, obviously there are Black lobbying groups, but there isn't necessarily a lobbying group that speaks for, and again, you know, you can argue the monolith, but for quote-unquote Black America.
As you were talking, as everyone was talking, of course, I'm thinking of the Congressional Black Caucus, and the reason I'm thinking of that is that, one, they've always demanded a meeting with the President of the United States. Now, that's the key word there is demand. And matter of fact, this is the week that 1971, that 14 members of the Congressional Black Caucus boycotted Richard Nixon's State of the Union speech because he refused to meet with them. Ronald Reagan took a long time. Now, the interesting thing is that Barack
Obama, I interrupted you midway in the story. You talked about the idea of Barack Obama being a former member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and now the idea that they have some entree, one would believe, into the Oval Office that they've heretofore not had.
Well, you would hope so. He's a former member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Therefore, he understands the agenda. He helped to establish the agenda. They represent 80 million people. That often transcends race and deals with issues. I would hope that what they would do initially is that they would put together an agenda based on conversation, lobbying, and then go to their former member who is now President of the United States and present a political agenda and a budget.
Yet, Clarence, there are those who will suggest, quite frankly, and I have friends in the Congressional Black colleagues and certainly, caucus, and certainly colleagues in one sense, but there are those who suggest that the Congressional Black Caucus needs to take a good look in the mirror and see how they've been handling and purporting to be the voice of Black America and whether they've done enough in the past.
Well, too often they've behaved like aldermen. They're constituency first, and they've really been oriented more toward the pork barrel. What can I bring home to my district? Because that's where they've been left by Republicans in the White House in particular, who have not really allowed them to have much of a real impact on the overall budget, so they look to earmarks or whatever other small projects they can bring back and put their name on.
Can they do much more than that, though, realistically?
Of course they can. You know, I mean, take education, for example. Barack Obama has criticized No Child Left Behind, but a lot of Black folks say, you know, at least you got accountability with No Child Left Behind. It's not getting funded adequately, maybe, or there's various other aspects of it, but do you just scrap it? A lot of folks are saying, no, don't scrap it. Let's have a real transparent and accountable way of directing money where it's needed most. And you can say the same thing with housing right now, with folks having trouble paying their mortgages. You could say the same thing with job development, etc.
One of the things that you can expect them to do, perhaps, Michelle, and certainly the Black community, quite frankly, is hold accountable, as Clarence suggested, the White House and this president now to say, we know you can't do everything for Black America, but doggone it, you need to put some of these things that have not been on the front burner on the front burner.
I am certain that many members of the Black community will do that, but I think one of the responses that we will receive as a people from the White House is just what President Obama said in his inauguration speech. There are things that government should do and can do, but you need to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again. He has had a message of personal responsibility that particularly resonates in the Black community, and I think that one of the things that we need to discuss is what is our role in this? How do we make our lives better? How do we make ourselves better? And just because we have a Black president doesn't mean that we should begin to look to government to solve all of the problems that ail our community.
2 points I'd make there. One is that often conservatives have said personal responsibility is the whole picture. Well, no. And liberals have said that government is the whole picture. No, it's really a combination of both. And that's what I heard in that inaugural speech.
That's what he said,
and it's a combination of both. Now, here's the other thing that's the 400-pound gorilla in the room. I love and respect Barack Obama, and I think he has a consciousness towards us. But you know, and all of us know, the doers and the thinkers in the White House are the people who may not know us. And we may have a difficult time getting through the gatekeepers who really don't know the black
Let's
community.
take May not, because you and I had this conversation privately on the phone last night. I'm going to go ahead and put it out here. Many of, not all of the gatekeepers there. I mean, clearly Valerie Jarrett is one of the gatekeepers, and clearly there are others who are at least conscious of much of the African-American community. But there are enough of them that they are like the old school that we're used to dealing with in any administration.
That's a smile being the Chicago representative here.
Do you, and knowing that, do you believe that he has suggested to them that you have to be open with an ear to what you may not know about?
Ed, the center of the universe has now moved from Crawford, Texas to Hyde Park,
That's true.
Chicago. I mean, his chief of staff, Rahm Emanuel, the Chicagoan. He's an urban congressman. We got an urban agenda walking in the door of the White House right now, really. I mean,
but an urban agenda, Clarence, let's be careful, though. An urban agenda is not an African-American agenda.
I know what you're saying. Yeah,
okay.
I know what you're saying. That's exactly right. And you have, but what's the difference? You see, that has to be defined, but we're in a position now to define it, and not just debate it off in some coffee house.
But we have to be very careful not to turn him from someone who is the president of the United States that happens to be black into the black president. Because if you do that, you will see there will be unintended consequences. You will have class wars. You will have race wars.
And he handled that masterfully. He was black enough for black folk and not too black for white folk.
Yeah. He was black enough for black votes after he won Iowa.
In the end. No, that's absolutely right.
Black folks said he's a spoiler for Hillary Clinton. He needs to get out of the race. Yeah.
Well, I smile because on my show, remember people were arguing 2 years ago, was he black enough?
Well, even before, even a year ago in some respects.
That's absolutely right. And then, of course, the other argument was, and I heard someone make, I think it was Chris Rock, who said, we gave you the safest black man we could possibly.
Is the future for this president. We keep hearing daunting task, Michelle. We keep hearing about the economy, the war, all of what may or may not occur with the big three and the recovery of the banks. This gives him an opportunity to be one of the greatest presidents ever. It also gives him the opportunity, quite frankly, to be a miserable failure in that first term.
Absolutely.
What does he have to be most careful of?
He has to be most careful of managing the expectations of the people that voted him into office. He has to be very careful of governing too far to the right or too far to the left. He's got to govern from the center. He has to take the economy very, very seriously, and he has to continue to beat that drumbeat that we've heard him say. A few weeks ago, you kept hearing him say, inherit, inherit, inherit. What did he inherit from the Bush administration? What did he inherit from the Clinton administration? And let us know that it is going to, this recovery will not take place overnight. It could be many, many years.
And let me add quickly that, and for everyone to understand this is a global recession.
Right.
So this is not just what he does domestically, which is extremely important, but he's not only the leader of the United States, he also is the leader of the free world. And this global recession could have tremendous impact on anything he does or say.
Clarence, let me ask you this. You have known him. You mentioned being from Chicago. I've had an opportunity to know him since he entered the Senate. I'm assuming you may have even known him prior to that. He's a very, very pragmatic man.
Yes.
To some degree, you can sometimes in daunting tasks be too pragmatic. Any concern there?
No, not really, because what's remarkable, Colin Powell hit it nail on the head when he talked about Barack Obama's steadiness. While John McCain was all over the place and too reactive, Barack is just the opposite. People complain that he reacts too slowly, like the recent Gaza crisis. Said, why don't you say something? Why don't you say something? Said, one president at a time. And what happens? Israel is kind of, I'm not going to say they settled it, but they certainly arranged for their pullout to come right before Barack Obama gets inaugurated. This happened throughout the campaign. Every criticism I would have of him, I'd prove to be wrong. He proved to be right. So I think the thing he's got to watch out for is just not appearing to be engaged. And Franklin Roosevelt, you're absolutely right. When he came into office, he had a whole different agenda. He got a much later start than Barack Obama, who just broke records as far as his transition goes. But by the end of Franklin Roosevelt's first term, even with the New Deal in place, the economy didn't improve that much. But his popularity went up. because people say, hey, he's doing something, he's engaged. So it's important for Barack Obama to at least show he's doing something, even if the economy does not completely recover in 4 years.
Well, Joe, Michelle, Clarence, thank you very much. We'll see day 3, 4, 5 and counting.